In a world that had offered her nothing but hardship, Emily Carter was a woman pushed to the brink of the unimaginable. Her 6-year-old son, Noah, lay in a pediatric wing at Mount Sinai Hospital in Chicago, his frail body ravaged by leukemia. His only chance at survival was a $250,000 bone marrow transplant, an amount far beyond Emily's reach. She had exhausted every legal avenue, applying for grants, pleading for donations, even humbling herself before her late husband's wealthy family. But her father-in-law, cruel and unforgiving, had never accepted her into their elite Boston lineage. When his son died in a car crash, he placed the blame squarely on Emily and severed all ties, including with his own grandson. With no one left to turn to and time slipping away, Emily swallowed her pride and stepped into the tower in Manhattan. Office of Grayson Wolf, the enigmatic and powerful CEO of Wolf Enterprises, where she'd only been working for 4 weeks as a junior analyst. She asked him for a $200,000 advance, knowing how absurd it would sound, but having no other choice. Grayson, cold and cynical from past betrayals, laughed at her request. He assumed it was another scam. Emily, advised by her friend never to mention she was a single mother if she wanted to keep her job, stayed silent about Noah. Grayson, who viewed vulnerability as manipulation, saw her composure as a challenge. Yet something in her eyes, her quiet strength, struck a nerve he didn't understand. When she bristled at his cruel insinuations, he was almost impressed. But fate wasn't done breaking her. That night, the hospital called. A donor had matched Noah's type, but if the payment didn't go through by morning, the match would be lost. Desperation silenced her shame. With shaking hands and a hollow soul, Emily returned to Grayson's penthouse suite overlooking Central Park. She accepted the unspoken bargain one night in exchange for the money. Grayson, though outwardly detached, was inwardly captivated. From the first day he saw her in the boardroom, she had haunted him. Dressed in a sleek black dress borrowed from a friend, Emily turned her late husband's photo face down and left for Grayson's suite. When she arrived, he was struck speechless by her beauty and the quiet sadness in her eyes. They said little. There was no pretense of seduction. What unfolded was raw, confusing, and emotional. For a few hours, the line between power and vulnerability blurred, but at sunrise, Emily rose from the bed numb and broken. She descended the stairs of the luxury hotel, ignoring Grayson's conflicted gaze from the balcony, grabbed the duffel bag of neatly stacked $100 bills, and disappeared into the cold morning light. Grayson watched her leave with bitterness, convinced she was like every other woman who had ever used him, just better at hiding it. He never imagined she had sold her dignity to save a dying child. With the money secured, Emily paid for the transplant. The surgery proceeded, and Noah was stable for now, but Emily couldn't breathe. She couldn't even tell Tessa, her closest friend, what she'd done. She returned to work, juggling hospital visits, sleepless nights, and brutal deadlines. Though frequently late and visibly exhausted, her intelligence and creativity caught the attention of even Grayson himself, who, despite his reputation for being emotionally barren, entrusted her with a multi-million-dollar project. He insisted she accompany him to Los Angeles for a client presentation. Leaving Noah unconscious in the care of a hired nanny, Emily boarded the red-eye flight to L.A., carrying the weight of survival in her carry-on bag. On the plane, Grayson tried to make small talk, hoping to understand the woman who now lived in the quiet corners of his mind. But Emily remained cold and professional. After the successful meeting, he invited her for a drink. She refused. He pressed further, suggesting something inappropriate, revealing just how deeply he misunderstood her. Furious and disgusted, Emily walked out of the hotel lounge without a word. That night, Grayson stood outside her room, conflicted, and finally apologized. He promised he wouldn't cross a line again. She nodded, but the wall between them had thickened. On the flight home, Grayson, still haunted by her, asked why she'd accepted his proposition once, but now seemed repulsed by him. Emily gave him silence. She had no energy to explain her hell. As soon as they landed at O'Hare International, she went straight to the hospital. No matter how cruel the world was, she would endure it all as long as her son kept breathing. Back at the office, Grayson couldn't focus. He invited the team, including Emily, to a celebratory dinner under the guise of business. She had no choice but to go. During dinner, Noah called. Like clockwork, he needed her bedtime story. Emily excused herself, stepped into the quiet lobby, and whispered into her phone, "I love you, baby. Now close your eyes." Grayson overheard the conversation and misread it entirely. He assumed she had a boyfriend. Rage simmered beneath his calm exterior. Back at the table, he abruptly slashed the deadline for her project from 2 months to 3 weeks. Emily, blindsided, said nothing. She had no time to unpack his moods. Her child's recovery came first. Thankfully, Emily had Tessa, her ever-loyal friend and colleague, who stayed up late with her, pushing through spreadsheets and slides. But exhaustion caught up. Emily filed for leave. Meanwhile, Grayson spiraled. In her absence, his temper flared. His mother and friends dragged him to a children's leukemia charity gala at the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Chicago. There, the hospital director took the mic and shared a moving story. A mother recently raised $250,000 in just one night to save her child's life. He then gestured to Emily, seated near the back. Grayson's world stopped in a single breath. The truth unraveled every cruel assumption he'd ever made. Shame poured over him like acid. That night he couldn't sleep. At sunrise, he drove to Emily's modest townhouse on the south side. When she opened the door and saw him, she tried to shut it again. He caught it, eyes red with guilt. "If I'd known it was for your son," he whispered, voice shaking, "I would have given you the money, no questions asked." "I never would have." Emily didn't let him finish. Her heart had endured too much. Her parents' deaths, her husband's funeral, and now watching her child fight for life had hardened her beyond repair. She didn't have room for apologies only. Survival. She looked him in the eye and said quietly, "Please don't come back." Grayson was crushed. At Wolf Enterprises, even his longtime friend and business partner Miles Porter began questioning his judgment, urging him not to terminate Emily just because she had hidden the existence of her son. What Grayson didn't know was that Miles had quietly grown fond of Emily too. Their first interaction had been simple. She'd dropped a USB drive on her first day, and Miles had returned it. But from the moment he saw her portfolio, he was quietly impressed. He'd even visited Noah's hospital room during the charity gala, though he never asked how she'd raised the money. Instead, he gently let her know, "If you ever need help again, don't hesitate." To Emily, Miles had become a rare beam of light in her storm-dark world, genuine, dependable, and kind. Soon after, the company's executive board convened to decide Emily's future. But before Grayson could speak a word in her defense, his secretary handed him an envelope, Emily's resignation letter. His heart stopped. He leapt from the room and rushed to find her, only to be met with her unwavering decision. Not even Miles's quiet urging could persuade her to stay. She packed her things and left the building without a backward glance, but Grayson wasn't ready to let her disappear from his life. Behind the scenes, he pulled every string he had, monitoring her job applications and contacting top architecture and design firms from New York to San Francisco, ordering them to hire her without interviews. When Emily found out, she was livid. She didn't want pity. She didn't want help from the man who once bought her body. She rejected every offer, fiercely determined to rise on her own. Yearning for peace, Emily drove out to Greenwood Cemetery in Boston to visit her late husband's grave. There, in the soft rustling of the trees, she sought clarity, but instead, she was stunned by the arrival of her estranged in-laws. Her Father-in-law, once cold and condemning, looked like a changed man. He had seen his son in a dream and had finally grasped the cruelty of his abandonment. Tearfully, he asked for forgiveness, for a chance to be part of Noah's life. Emily, still deeply hurt, couldn't grant full forgiveness, but she agreed to let them visit their grandson. That evening, after her mother-in-law left, Emily found a leather bag on her kitchen table. Inside was $250,000, the exact amount she'd once sold herself for. It turned out her father-in-law had prepared it months ago, but lacked the courage to offer it then. Now he was giving it in remorse. Emily collapsed into tears in front of Tessa, choking on the irony. "Why now?" she cried. "Why not when I was begging in the rain?" Meanwhile, Grayson was drowning in guilt and longing. A glimmer of redemption came when Emily's sustainable housing project, submitted months earlier, won a prestigious international design award. Seizing the excuse, he invited her to dinner. Strictly professional, he claimed. But his heart was a storm. That night, as she arrived at the quiet rooftop restaurant, he began to apologize. He told her everything, how much he hated himself for mocking her, how blind he'd been. Just as he was about to confess the depth of his love, Emily pulled out the same duffel bag of $250,000, the money that had once broken her spirit, and dropped it on the table between them. Without a word, she turned and walked away. Grayson sat alone, ashamed beyond measure, devastated. He drove to his family's secluded mountain villa in Aspen, seeking solitude. The cabin, once filled with childhood echoes, now whispered of pain. His mother's manipulations, the night she fled with him after accusing his father of betrayal, and the bitter truth that his father had died in the arms of another woman. That dark legacy had poisoned his view of love and trust. But now, Emily's sacrifice had shattered those beliefs. He saw himself for who he'd been, a man so haunted by his past, he couldn't recognize grace when it stood before him. Weeks later, the Architects' Award ceremony was held at a glittering gala in Los Angeles. Grayson arrived unannounced, sharply dressed and humble. He found Noah at the refreshment table, knelt beside him, and offered a gentle, "Hi, buddy." Before the boy could respond, Emily appeared, holding a juice box and clearly uneasy. That night, when Emily took the stage to accept the award, her speech on resilience and rebirth silenced the room. Grayson watched, awed not by her past, but by her fire. After the event, he approached her quietly, promising to hand over the reins of Wolf Enterprises to Miles so she could return on her own terms, no interference. Emily, moved by the gesture, looked at him differently for the first time. Though she hadn't forgiven him, Grayson didn't stop pursuing her, but now with respect. Unknown to Emily, he had begun designing a state-of-the-art children's cancer hospital based entirely on her sketches. He spent weekends scouting sites across the country, while Miles, who'd grown closer to Emily, found himself drawn to her intelligence and warmth. One evening, Miles almost asked her out to dinner, but lost his nerve when co-workers showed up. Later that night, he jokingly told Grayson he had plans with someone special. Grayson, clueless, gave him romantic advice, never realizing they were in love with the same woman. Meanwhile, Tessa, always cheerful, always loyal, was secretly in love with Miles. That same evening, she wore her favorite red dress, hoping to win his heart, only to be crushed when he texted her to cancel because he was meeting with Emily. Later that night, Miles tried to confess his feelings, but just as he opened his heart, Grayson arrived unexpectedly. Emily, misreading the situation, felt ambushed. Furious, she stormed out. Grayson ran after her, breathless, blurting out the truth. "I love you, Emily." But she turned to him, her eyes full of fire. "Love doesn't undo humiliation," she whispered, walking away. Miles, caught in the middle, felt betrayed, but listened as Grayson revealed his own scars. For the first time, he understood his friend's coldness wasn't cruelty, it was trauma. As a gesture of healing, Grayson invested millions into the new hospital and gave Emily full control. Just when the air between them began to soften, a tabloid article exposed their growing closeness. But Grayson, unfazed, stepped up to clear the rumors publicly, defending Emily and Noah in front of the press. That moment shifted something in her. She hadn't felt like anyone's priority since her husband's death. Still, she refused his proposal, not out of spite but self-preservation. But her heart began to thaw. Until one night, a corrupt supplier approached Emily with a bribe to approve cheap medical materials for the hospital. When she rejected him, he threatened her and Noah. Grayson lost control. He and Miles tracked the man down and made it clear never come near Emily again. But the man wasn't acting alone. Behind him loomed Nathan Caldwell, Grayson's ruthless business rival. Just as Grayson praised Emily at the hospital's official groundbreaking, his mother, sharp-tongued and manipulative, humiliated her in public, dredging up her past. Emily's defenses snapped. Fearing history would repeat itself, she pushed Grayson away again. That night, he confronted his mother, the argument tearing open old wounds. "Now I understand why Dad left," he said bitterly. "You drove him to it." His mother broke down, swearing vengeance. At the same time, Emily was drawn into her late husband's family drama. Scandals rocked the family. His brother's affair went public, and the patriarch suffered a heart attack. Despite everything, Emily stepped in to help. With Grayson at her side, they brought calm to the chaos. Slowly, he became part of her world. But even as her heart softened, Noah wrestled with fears of being replaced. One night, he asked his grandparents if he could live with them if his mom remarried. When Emily found out, she was heartbroken. Grayson tried to reach the boy through kindness, reading books, building Legos, opening up about his own broken childhood, and gradually, in that quiet mountain refuge where the past met the future, Emily began to see Grayson not as the man who once shattered her, but as the man who rebuilt himself, just to be worthy of her. Thankfully, Emily's love, both as a mother and a woman, had become the only harbor where Grayson's battle-scarred soul could rest. But peace was fleeting under the suffocating grip of Samaya, his possessive, manipulative mother who refused to release her son from her control. When she demanded to know Grayson's whereabouts, he deflected, saying only that he was staying with Emily's relatives, hoping to protect Emily and Noah. The vague answer sent Samaya into a tailspin of jealousy and paranoia. In a reckless act, she sent a company driver, unaware that the man was secretly working for Nathan Caldwell, Grayson's longtime rival, to take her to the secluded Vermont countryside villa. Her arrival infuriated Grayson, who knew every visitor increased the threat to Emily and Noah's safety. But Samaya, ever the manipulator, arrived playing the role of the frail, teary-eyed mother. Her facade quickly faded. She mistreated the nanny, insulted Emily's parenting, and worst of all, began planting emotional poison in Noah's young mind, suggesting Grayson might replace his late father. The boy lashed out in confusion, leading Grayson to finally confront his mother and demand she stop. But Samaya, true to form, played the victim again. Grayson called Miles, desperate for help. Within hours, Miles's mother, a warm, grounded woman, arrived to gently escort Samaya away. The atmosphere lightened. Grayson apologized profusely to Emily and the nanny, vowing that no one, not even his mother, would ever hurt them again. He drove them to a grassy hillside just outside the town, where he showed them a vacant lot and revealed his plan: a state-of-the-art children's hospital and amusement park, to be built under Emily's direction. The vision melted Emily's defenses. For the first time, they felt like a real family. But their moment of peace was being watched. Two men hiding in the distance, sent by the same supplier who had once shot Grayson. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Days later, desperate to regain her son's attention, Samaya faked a suicide attempt, overdosing on sleeping pills to force Grayson back to her. He rushed her to Mount Sinai Hospital, leaving the villa unguarded. That night, the two men broke in. They tied up Emily and the nanny and abducted the unconscious Noah, delivering him to the supplier, now seeking vengeance by using the boy as leverage. Grayson was devastated. He launched a police investigation, and security footage revealed the betrayal of the same driver Samaya had trusted. Emily spiraled into despair, but Grayson remained her anchor until Emily's father-in-law, who had begun rebuilding trust with her, accused Grayson of endangering Noah and demanded custody. Emily, snapping under the weight of years of abandonment, finally exploded, calling out his hypocrisy. Meanwhile, Grayson's enemies escalated. A woman named May, once his father's mistress, came forward with information. Nathan Caldwell, the same man behind the smear campaigns and assassination attempts, had been orchestrating everything for decades, seeking revenge for being imprisoned by Grayson's father years ago. As fear mounted, Emily broke down and ended things with Grayson, choosing her son's safety over love. Grayson, shattered, charged into Nathan's estate in a rage. Unbeknownst to everyone, Miles had quietly received a terminal cancer diagnosis. Not wanting pity, he left for treatment alone. But when Wolf Enterprises faced bankruptcy framed for the supplier's murder, Miles returned, putting his health aside to help Grayson fight back. Working covertly, they planted a spy inside Nathan's company, Britt, a scorned ex-girlfriend of Emily's brother-in-law. Britt courageously planted a listening device under Nathan's desk. Her recording captured everything: Nathan boasting about framing Grayson and ordering the supplier's execution. But before the police could act, Nathan discovered the betrayal, kidnapped Britt, and tortured her until officers raided the hideout. Nathan was shot dead, but the damage was done. Britt survived, emotionally shattered. Grayson visited her in the hospital, full of gratitude and remorse. He offered her lifelong support. Watching his televised interview, Emily's heart crumbled. With guilt, she apologized to Grayson, admitting her love and the real reason she stayed away: Noah's safety. But Grayson, still wounded, brushed her off with distant professionalism. Emily's friend Tessa gently reminded her, if he didn't love you, he wouldn't care so much. Just give him time. Grayson, unable to forgive yet unable to forget, escaped to Istanbul, where he poured out his anguish to Mia, a brilliant architect and college friend who still harbored feelings for him. She saw through him instantly and offered to help salvage his collapsing empire. Returning to Los Angeles, Mia became project manager at Wolf Enterprises. Her presence stirred unease in Emily. Mia flirted with Grayson in public, and he didn't stop her. Still, Emily pressed on, hiring a detective who tracked down Miles in a rural Oregon clinic. When Emily visited, Miles begged her not to tell anyone about his condition. She promised. Back home, support was crumbling. Samaya berated Emily as a gold digger. Privately, she hoped Mia, of noble lineage and wealthy connections, would become her daughter-in-law. Mia, emboldened, began pursuing Grayson more openly. On her birthday, she invited him to dinner, where they unexpectedly bumped into Emily and Tessa. The tension was palpable. Later, Mia staged a fake burglary at her apartment, then sent Emily a video showing a suggestive photo of her and Grayson. In an embrace, the ploy worked. Emily, heartbroken, confronted Grayson, who denied any romantic involvement with Mia, but lashed out at Emily for doubting him before. Their argument ended in a brutal breakup, words cutting deeper than any betrayal. Grayson, drunk and numb, ended up spending the night at Mia's place. When he woke, filled with regret, Mia wore a smug smile. Meanwhile, Miles's mother visited Emily, worried about her son's absence. Suspecting the truth, Emily rushed to find him at the docks. He was about to leave the country for good. She pleaded with him, and he finally admitted everything. Emily vowed to stay and fight beside him. To do so, she resigned from her job. Grayson, unaware of the truth, felt betrayed. When Miles later sold his shares and disappeared again, Grayson's fury exploded. One afternoon, he caught Emily tenderly caring for Miles at a mountain cabin and jumped to the worst conclusion. His mother stoked his fury. Mia, ever strategic, planted doubts in his mind. Convinced they had plotted against him, Grayson barged into the cabin and accused Emily of infidelity. She refused to explain, prioritizing Miles's dignity over Grayson's ego. In rage, Grayson turned on Miles. Their fight ended with a brutal truth. Miles revealed that Grayson once paid Emily for a night. The friendship shattered. Afterward, Miles quietly told Emily about the argument, but never mentioned his illness. Tessa, learning the truth from Emily, was devastated that she'd been lied to. Still, she vowed to fight for Miles, even if it broke her heart. Meanwhile, Mia's presence continued to feel hollow to Grayson. Her morals clashed with his. Then, the inevitable happened. Miles collapsed. Tessa rushed into the hospital. Emily alerted his mother. Everyone tried to stay positive, hiding the terminal prognosis. Even Samaya learned the truth accidentally from a child and begged Miles to go abroad for treatment. He refused. As Grayson and Mia's wedding day neared, tensions rose. Samaya avoided the preparations. Grayson noticed. One evening, Miles, running a high fever, begged to be left alone. Grayson stood outside his room for minutes but walked away. The next morning, Tessa brought him to the hospital too late. Miles fell into a coma. Samaya wanted to tell Grayson, but Emily begged her to honor Miles's wish to keep it secret. The next day, as wedding details were finalized, Emily called Samaya, but Grayson answered. He heard the words, "Miles is gone." Everything stopped. Grayson abandoned the wedding and rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Tessa, through tears, told him the truth. Grayson broke, remembering the night before, how he could have knocked, how he could have stayed. Samaya chased him down the hallway, sobbing, but he couldn't forgive her or himself. Mia, humiliated, became the talk of the elite, left at the altar by a man who could never love her. Days later, at Miles's funeral, mourners gathered in quiet grief. Except for Grayson, who stood hidden behind the trees, shattered, unseen, and utterly alone. Grayson felt too ashamed to face his best friend Miles, haunted by guilt for not recognizing his silent suffering and for scolding him when he needed compassion most. Though Miles's body now rested beneath the earth, his spirit of generosity lived on, revealed in a will that transferred all his company shares to Noah, Emily's young son. Because Noah was still a minor, Emily was named temporary manager, giving her equal authority with Grayson over all future company decisions. Emily was stunned by the revelation, reluctant to accept something she hadn't earned. But as Tessa sorted through Miles's belongings, she came across a letter addressed to Emily. In it, Miles confessed his deep love for her and begged her to accept the shares, not just for Noah's future, but to fulfill his own dream of creating a foundation for pediatric cancer patients. His heartfelt words moved both women to tears. Inspired, they vowed to honor his memory by co-managing the foundation, turning grief into action. Meanwhile, Grayson, paralyzed by sorrow, vanished after spending days at Miles's gravesite. He delegated his responsibilities to the executive manager, leaving Mia to seize control. Hungry for power, Mia demanded full authority, banned any mention of Miles in the office, and fired employees who dared oppose her. But her reign of control was short-lived. When Emily returned as an equal shareholder, she overturned Mia's harsh policies, reinstated fairness, and restored warmth to the company culture. Surprisingly, Emily still invited Mia to attend board meetings, hoping to foster peace and offer. Mia bitterly rejected, seeing it only as condescension. A month later, Grayson returned to his private Long Island villa, only to be greeted by Mia's pent-up anger. She ranted about losing control and blamed Emily for ruining everything. Grayson quietly listened, then investigated the truth himself. When he confirmed that Miles's final wishes were being fulfilled with dignity and sincerity, he began to soften. He reconciled with his mother, Samaya, who, after witnessing Emily's commitment, finally admitted her wrongdoings. She told Grayson she'd been wrong to sabotage their love and encouraged him to reunite with the only woman who had ever truly reached his heart. But Grayson remained torn. The grief of losing Miles and the shadows of past betrayals still clouded his emotions. When he finally showed up at Emily's door, she opened it with fragile hope. But that hope was crushed when he looked her in the eyes and coldly said, "I will never forgive you," before walking away. The words shattered her. Plagued by insomnia and regret, Grayson decided to leave the city altogether. He handed over the company to Samaya, despite her protests, and informed Mia he was moving to Dubai. Mia exploded, calling him a coward, accusing him of betrayal, but he responded only with a quiet, pained apology. He bid farewell to both women and vanished, but before his plane could take off, Samaya rushed to Emily's home, tears streaming down her face, begging her to stop Grayson before it was too late. For a moment, Emily hesitated, then, bolstered by encouragement from her loved ones, she found the strength to fight for love once more. She raced through traffic, tracking him down, and when she spotted his car near the terminal, she banged on the window with trembling hands. At first, Grayson drove off, unwilling to risk more pain, but a few blocks later, he stopped. Love, stronger than fear, pulled him back. When Emily caught up to him again, they walked together under the fading sky, hand in hand, finally surrendering to the love that had survived so many storms. The next day, Grayson called the team for an emotional gathering. He acknowledged their collective grief, honored Miles's memory, and announced their wedding. Cheers erupted. Tessa wept. Even the board applauded. Everyone, it seemed, had found peace, except Mia, jealous and wounded. She lashed out one final time before retreating to rebuild her life. Weeks later, she returned quietly to offer sincere blessings to the couple and vowed to search for happiness of her own. As a symbol of love, Grayson purchased a seaside villa for Emily and Noah, a tranquil escape from all they had endured. While searching for furniture, Emily discovered that her late husband's family mansion was up for auction, lost to gambling debts racked up by the younger brother. Though the family refused her help out of pride, Grayson bought the property under his manager's name and rented it to them for free, preserving their dignity while easing Emily's heartache. At last, after a month of heartfelt preparations, their wedding day arrived. The ceremony took place in a sunlit garden by the sea. Emily's in-laws were in attendance, quietly watching as the truth came to light. They learned Grayson had been their secret benefactor all along, their eyes filled with tears, grateful that Emily had found a man with true character. As the couple made their grand entrance, dazzling in elegant attire, Grayson placed diamond jewelry around Emily's neck and whispered vows that promised to honor her not just with wealth, but with unwavering love and protection. Their chemistry electrified the air, drawing tears, laughter, and applause from every corner. When Emily's in-laws approached to thank him, Grayson simply smiled and said, "We're family now. No thanks needed." And in that moment, everyone knew through trials and sacrifice, heartbreak and healing, these two had proved that love, when rooted in courage and compassion, could weather any storm. For those still struggling through the darkness, their story stood as a quiet reminder. Hope lives on, and even the most battered hearts can still find their way home. Thank you so much for watching and supporting our story for such a long time. Your presence and encouragement mean the world to us. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment and share how the story touched you. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt and inspiring stories coming your way.